Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and stared at the thing floating in space. The thing was huge. It was bigger than any building he had ever seen. It was even bigger than some small moons. The thing looked like it was made of crystal, but not any crystal from Earth. This crystal glowed with soft blue and green lights that moved across its surface like water. "What do you think it is?" asked Dr. Lisa Carter. She was the ship's expert on alien things. Lisa had studied alien ruins and artifacts for 15 years. She had never seen anything like this before. Jake shook his head. "I have no idea, but it's giving off some kind of energy." "Pete, are you getting any signals from that thing?" Lieutenant Pete Jackson sat at the communications desk. He had been listening to space radio for the past hour. Most of the time, space was quiet, but not today. "Yes, sir, I'm getting signals. Lots of them, but they're weird. Some of them sound really old, and they're in languages I don't recognize." "How old?" Lisa asked. She moved closer to Pete's station. "Some of these signals might be thousands of years old," Pete said. "The computer is trying to translate them, but it's having trouble. What I can understand sounds like, well, like people calling for help." Jake felt a chill run down his back. Help signals that were thousands of years old meant only one thing. People had been trapped in that crystal structure for a very long time. "Take us closer," Jake ordered. "But keep the shields up. I don't like the look of this." The ship moved slowly toward the crystal structure. As they got closer, everyone could see that the structure was even stranger than they first thought. The crystal walls had things built into them. There were pieces of metal that looked like they came from different kinds of ships. There were symbols and writing in dozens of different styles. It was like someone had taken pieces from many different alien civilizations and stuck them all together. "Captain," Lisa said. Her voice was excited but worried. "I'm seeing architectural elements from at least 30 different species. Look at that section there. Those curved walls are definitely Andromedan. And over there, those geometric patterns are classic Helix Empire design. But Captain, some of these civilizations have been dead for thousands of years." "Dead?" asked Jake. "Well, we thought they were dead. We never found out what happened to them. They just vanished from history. But if their architecture is in this structure ... then maybe they're not dead," Jake finished. "Maybe they're trapped." The ship's engineer, Kate Phillips, looked up from her instruments. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy sources inside that thing. The structure is definitely artificial, and it's still active. Whatever built this, it's still running." As their ship got closer, something amazing happened. A section of the crystal wall began to glow brighter. The glow spread outward until it formed the shape of a doorway. The doorway was big enough for their ship to fly through. "Well, that's not creepy at all," said Pete. "It knows we're here," Kate said. "The structure is responding to our presence." That door opened automatically when we got close enough. Jake stared at the glowing doorway. Every instinct told him this was dangerous. But the help signals Pete was picking up meant that people inside needed rescue. Real people who had been trapped for who knows how long. "Are the distress signals coming from inside?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir," Pete replied. "Definitely from inside. And Captain, I'm picking up life signs too. Faint, but they're there. Lots of them." Jake made his decision. "We're going in, but we go in carefully. Kate, can you scan the interior?" Kate worked her controls for several minutes. "The interior is huge, Captain. I mean really huge. It's like a city in there. Multiple levels, thousands of rooms, and yes, I'm definitely reading life signs. But the life signs are strange. They're not quite normal. It's like the people are alive, but not completely alive." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. I don't know, sir. We'll have to go inside to find out. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Lisa looked excited and curious. Pete looked worried but determined. Kate looked fascinated by the engineering. Challenge. These were good people. They had been through dangerous situations before. All right, people. We're going inside. But we stick together, and we're ready to leave at the first sign of serious trouble. Lisa, bring your translation equipment. Pete, keep monitoring those signals. Kate, scan everything you can. I want to know how this place works. The ship flew slowly through the glowing doorway. As soon as they passed through, the doorway closed behind them. Jake felt his stomach drop, but he didn't let it show on his face. They were committed now. Inside the structure, they found themselves in a vast chamber. The walls stretched up so high that they disappeared into darkness. The chamber was filled with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. In the center of the chamber, there were dozens of holographic displays floating in the air. Take us down, Jake ordered. Let's see what those displays say. The ship landed on a smooth crystal floor. Jake could see that the floor was covered with symbols and writing from many different civilizations. As soon as the ship touched down, the holographic displays began to change. Text appeared in hundreds of different languages, scrolling past. Too fast to read. Pete, are you getting this? Jake asked. Yes, sir. The computer is recording everything. And Captain, it's starting to translate some of it. What does it say? Pete was quiet for a moment, reading the translated text. When he spoke again, his voice was very serious. It's rules, Captain. Rules for some kind of test or game. The basic message is the same in every language. It says, "Welcome to the challenge. Solve the puzzle to earn your freedom. Fail and remain forever." Jake felt the chill in his spine get worse. Remain forever. That explains the old distress signals. There's more, Captain, Pete continued. It says that many species have attempted the challenge. It says that all who enter are sustained by the structure itself until they succeed or, well, until they give up trying. Lisa was studying the symbols on the floor. Captain, I think I understand what this place is. It's a test, but not just any test. It's designed to test intelligence and problem-solving ability. And based on the evidence, hundreds of different species have tried it over thousands of years. And none of them succeeded? Jake asked. If they had succeeded, they wouldn't still be here, Lisa replied. Just then, Kate called out from her instruments. Captain, I'm reading movement deeper in the structure. Big movements. I think some of the trapped civilizations are coming to meet us. Jake looked around at his crew one more time. They had come here to explore and maybe to rescue people. Now, it looked like they might need rescuing themselves. But Jake Morrison had not become a starship captain by running away from challenges. All right, people. It looks like we're about to meet some aliens who have been stuck in here for a very long time. Let's see what we can learn from them. And let's see if humans can succeed where everyone else has failed. The first aliens to meet the humans were tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like metal. They moved in perfect formation, like soldiers marching. Their leader approached Captain Jake Morrison and spoke in a voice that sounded like a computer. I am Prime Calculator of the Zephyrian Mathematical Collective, the alien said. We have been in this structure for 2,347 standard years, 4 months, and 16 days. We welcome you, though we regret that. You are now trapped as we are. Jake stared at the alien. 2,000 years. That was longer than most human civilizations had existed. Trapped? Can't you just leave the way you came in? Prime Calculator made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded sad. The entrance seals upon entry. The only way out is to complete the challenge successfully. We have attempted 847,000 different mathematical solutions. None have succeeded. Dr. Lisa Carter stepped forward. What exactly is the challenge? It is a series of puzzles, Prime Calculator explained. Each puzzle tests different aspects of intelligence. Logic, mathematics, spatial reasoning, pattern, recognition. The puzzles adapt and become more complex as you solve them. We Zephyrians are the most logical species in our galaxy, yet we remain here. Engineer Kate Phillips was studying the alien technology around them. The Zephyrians had built an entire city inside the structure. Their buildings were perfectly geometric, with every angle calculated to mathematical precision. How many puzzles are there? Kate asked. Unknown, Prime Calculator replied. We have solved 12,847 puzzles so far. Each time we solve one, 3 new ones appear. The structure learns from our solutions and creates new challenges based on our thinking patterns. Before Jake could ask more questions, a new group of aliens approached. These aliens were different. They moved as one unit, like they were all connected somehow. When one turned its head, they all turned their heads. When one stepped forward, they all stepped forward. We are the Corellian Collective, they said in perfect unison. We speak as one because we think as one. We have been here for 812 years. We have solved 8,934 puzzles through perfect coordination and shared consciousness. Lieutenant Pete Jackson looked confused. If you've solved so many puzzles, why are you still here? Because solving puzzles is not enough, the Corellians replied. Together, the structure requires something more. Something we do not possess. Something the Zephyrians do not possess. Something that perhaps no species possesses. Jake was starting to understand the scope of the problem. How many species are trapped in here? Prime Calculator's metal-like face somehow managed to look grim. Currently, there are representatives from 43 different civilizations in this structure. The oldest have been here for over 5,000 years. The newest arrived last week. Last week? Lisa asked. The hegemony of Krell, Prime Calculator said. A warrior species known for their tactical brilliance. They have already solved more puzzles in 1 week than most species solve in their first year. Dr. Amy Foster, the ship's psychologist, had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. Has anyone tried to understand why the structure was built? Who built it and what they wanted? The Zephyrians and Corellians exchanged what looked like glances. We call them the architects, Prime Calculator said. They left behind some records, but the records are themselves puzzles. What we have learned is that the architects built this structure as a test. They were looking for something specific. Looking for what? Amy asked. A type of thinking that they called true unpredictability, the Corellians answered together. They believed that all intelligence eventually becomes predictable. Even their own intelligence had become predictable to them. They feared this predictability was limiting their growth as a species. Kate was examining some of the alien technology more closely. So they built this place to find a species that thinks in unpredictable ways? Correct, Prime Calculator said. But every species that enters applies their greatest strengths to the puzzles. We Zephyrians use pure logic and mathematics. The Corellians use perfect coordination. The Krell use military tactics. But the structure learns these patterns and adapts to counter them. Jake was beginning to see the trap. So the very things that made each species successful in the outside world become their weakness here. Precisely, Prime Calculator said. The structure becomes more complex, specifically to counter each species' problem-solving methods. We are trapped by our own strengths. Amy Foster looked thoughtful. What about species that don't have obvious strengths? What about species that are ... chaotic? The aliens looked at her with what might have been confusion. Chaos is not useful for solving puzzles. Prime Calculator said. Chaos creates errors. And failures. Maybe, Amy said quietly. Or maybe chaos is exactly what this place is looking for. Jake decided it was time to see these puzzles for himself. Can you show us some of the challenges? Prime Calculator led them deeper into the thaw. Structure. They passed through areas built by different alien civilizations. Each area reflected the thinking of its builders. The Zephyrian areas were all straight lines and perfect angles. The Corellian areas had multiple pathways that all led to the same destinations, showing their belief in unity. Other areas showed different approaches to architecture and design. Finally, they reached a large chamber filled with floating puzzle devices. Each device was different, but they all glowed with the same energy as the structure itself. Some puzzles looked like three-dimensional mathematics problems. Others looked like complex machines that needed to be assembled. Still others looked like mazes or pattern-matching games. Choose any puzzle, Prime Calculator said, but be warned. Once you begin, the structure will start learning your methods. Every solution you provide teaches it how to make harder puzzles specifically designed to defeat your thinking. Jake looked at his crew. They were outnumbered by aliens who had been working on these puzzles for hundreds or thousands of years. The logical thing to do would be to study the aliens' methods and try to build on their work. But as Jake looked at the puzzles, he had a different idea. What if the logical thing to do was exactly the wrong thing to do? Corporal Danny Rodriguez had been quiet during the whole conversation, but now he stepped forward. Captain, can I try one of these? Danny, these aliens have been working on this for thousands of years, Jake said. I know, sir, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe they've been thinking about it too hard. Danny walked over to a puzzle that looked like a complex gravitational simulation. The Zephyrians had been working on it for 6 months, trying to calculate the exact orbital mechanics needed to balance 17 different celestial bodies. Instead of studying the mathematics, Danny started moving the celestial bodies around randomly. He wasn't calculating anything. He was just playing with them like they were toys. Stop, Prime Calculator said in alarm. You will disrupt our calculations. But as Danny moved the objects around without any plan, something unexpected happened. The objects began to settle into a stable pattern that none of the careful calculations had achieved. The puzzle made a pleasant chiming sound and dissolved into light. Prime Calculator stared at the empty space where the puzzle had been. That is ... impossible. You solved in 30 seconds what we have been working on for months. Annie shrugged. My little daughter has toys that work like this. You just have to let them find their own balance instead of trying to force them. Jake felt a smile spreading across his face. Maybe humans really were different. Maybe their unpredictability was exactly what this place was looking for. All right, people, Jake said. I think it's time we showed these puzzles what human thinking looks like. Word of Danny Rodriguez's success spread quickly through the alien communities in the structure. Within hours, representatives from dozens of different species had gathered to watch the humans work on puzzles. Most of them looked skeptical. A few looked hopeful. All of them looked tired from years or centuries of failure. Medical Officer Susan Wright was the next human to try a puzzle. She chose one that had stumped the Biological Sciences Consortium for 300 years. The puzzle was a complex ecosystem simulation where different life forms had to be balanced to create a stable environment. The aliens had tried every scientific approach they could think of. They had calculated optimal population ratios, analyzed nutrient cycles, and modeled predator-prey relationships. Their solutions were scientifically perfect, but the puzzle kept rejecting them. Susan looked at the simulation for a few minutes, then started making changes that horrified the alien scientists. Instead of creating perfect balance, she deliberately introduced small imperfections. She made some plants grow in uneven patches. She let some animal populations get slightly too large before introducing natural predators. "You are creating chaos," said Dr. Vex9 of the Biological Sciences Consortium. "The ecosystem will collapse." But Susan was thinking about her grandmother's garden back on Earth. Her grandmother never planted in perfect rows. She let weeds grow in some areas because they helped other plants. She let some vegetables overgrow and go to seed because it made the soil richer for next year. "Sometimes imperfection creates stronger systems," Susan said as she adjusted the simulation. "Perfect balance is fragile. Natural systems need a little chaos to stay healthy." The ecosystem simulation began to stabilize in ways the alien scientists had never seen. The imperfections Susan had introduced actually made the system more robust. Plants and animals adapted to the small challenges, making them stronger overall. The puzzle chimed and dissolved. Dr. Vex9 stared in amazement. Deliberate. Imperfection as a solution principle we never considered. We always sought optimization. Tech specialist Mark Collins was working on a mechanical puzzle while this was happening. The puzzle was a complex device that needed to be assembled from hundreds of parts. The Krell warriors had been trying to build it according to the original design specifications for weeks. Mark looked at the design for about 5 minutes, then started using the parts in completely different ways. He took pieces that were supposed to be connectors and used them as supports. He took parts that were meant to be supports and used them as energy conduits. "You are not following the design," General Fax of the Krell said. "Each component has a specific function." "Maybe," Mark said, continuing to build something that looked nothing like the original design. "But back home, I fix coffee makers with parts from old radios." Just because something was designed for one purpose doesn't mean it can't work for something else. What Mark built looked like a coffee maker designed by someone who had never seen a coffee maker. But when he activated it, the device not only worked perfectly, it worked better than the original design had suggested. The puzzle chimed and dissolved. General Fax looked confused and impressed. Functional redesign using misappropriated components. This is not how we approach engineering problems. Captain Jake Morrison watched his crew work and began to understand what was happening. The aliens were all trying to solve the puzzles correctly. They were applying their best knowledge and their strongest skills. But the structure had learned to expect that approach. Humans, on the other hand, were approaching the puzzles like games rather than tests. They were willing to break rules, try wrong approaches, and use things in ways they were never intended to be used. "Lisa," Jake said to Dr. Carter, "what do you think? Are we actually better at this than these other species?" Lisa was watching. Pilot Emma Lewis deliberately crashed a flight simulator over and over again, each crash revealing new information about how the system worked. "No, Captain, we're not better. We're just different. These species are incredibly intelligent, much more intelligent than us in many ways, but they're all trying to succeed. We're willing to fail, and that makes a difference? In this place? I think it makes all the difference." Navigator Tom Brooks had been studying the overall layout of the puzzle chamber. While everyone else focused on individual puzzles, Tom was looking at how the puzzles related to each other. He started noticing patterns. "Captain," Tom called out, "I think these puzzles are connected somehow. Look at this." Tom had been moving pieces from one puzzle to another, creating hybrid solutions that used elements from multiple challenges. The aliens watched in horror as he destroyed carefully organized puzzle elements. But Tom's hybrid approach was opening up new pathways and revealing hidden connections between different challenges. He was treating the entire chamber as one massive, interconnected puzzle rather than hundreds of separate problems. "You cannot mix solutions," Prime Calculator protested. "Each puzzle must be solved independently. Says who? Tom asked. The instructions just say to solve the puzzles. They don't say we can't use the solutions together. As Tom continued to create hybrid solutions, other puzzles in the chamber began responding in new ways. Puzzles that had been static for years started changing and evolving. Dr. Amy Foster was observing the alien reactions to human methods. Captain, I think I understand something important. The aliens aren't just trapped by the puzzles. They're trapped by their own assumptions about how problems should be solved. What do you mean? Every species here is highly advanced. They've developed sophisticated methods for solving problems, but those methods have become rigid. They can't imagine solving problems any other way. And humans? Amy smiled. Humans are barely advanced at all compared to these species. We don't have sophisticated methods. We just try things and see what happens. That randomness is exactly what this place was designed to find. Communications Officer Kelly Martinez had been trying to understand the structure's central computer system, but instead of trying to access it properly, she was arguing with it. This whole setup is stupid, Kelly told the computer. You're not testing intelligence. You're testing stubbornness. Smart people know when to quit. The other aliens looked shocked. No one had ever criticized the structure directly before. They had accepted the challenge as legitimate and focused on trying to pass it. But Kelly continued her argument. You want to find unpredictable thinking? Well, here's some unpredictable thinking. What if the real test isn't solving your puzzles? What if the real test is being smart enough to realize that your puzzles are flawed? The structure's lights began flickering in new patterns. Something was responding to Kelly's criticism in ways that normal puzzle solving had never triggered. Engineer Kate Phillips and mechanic Paul Turner were working together on the structure's core systems. But instead of trying to understand how the systems worked, they were trying to improve them. This energy distribution is inefficient, Kate said, making modifications to alien technology that was thousands of years old. And this processing core has bottlenecks that slow down the whole system. The cooling system could be better too, Paul added, rerouting some of the structure's internal mechanisms. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans casually improved technology that their civilizations had spent centuries trying to understand. You are modifying the architect's design, said Elder Cosmic of the Eternal Watchers. That is unprecedented. Well, the architects were smart, Kate said, but they weren't perfect. No one is. There's always room for improvement. As the humans continued their unconventional approaches, something fundamental began to change in the structure. The lights grew brighter. The energy flows became more efficient. And deep in the core systems, ancient programs that had been dormant for millennia began to activate. Jake looked around at his crew and felt proud. They weren't the smartest beings in the galaxy. They weren't the most logical or the most coordinated, but they were willing to try things that no one else would try. They were willing to fail, to break rules, and to question authority. And in this ancient test designed to find truly unpredictable thinking, those human traits were exactly what had been needed all along. The structure was changing. Everyone could feel it. The walls hummed with new energy. Lights that had been dim for thousands of years were getting brighter. And most importantly, new pathways were opening throughout the massive complex. Calculator of the Zephyrians approached Captain Jake Morrison with something that looked like excitement on his metallic features. The humans have activated systems we did not know existed. Ancient programs are running for the first time in our recorded history here. Jake was watching his crew continue to work on puzzles in ways that amazed and horrified their alien audience. What kind of programs? We are not certain. But the structure is responding to human methods in ways it never responded to our approaches. We believe you may have found what the architects were truly seeking. Dr. Lisa Carter was studying some newly revealed wall panels that showed architect writing. The writing was becoming clearer as the structure's systems activated. Captain, I'm starting to understand more about who built this place and why. What are you finding? The architects weren't just testing intelligence, Lisa said. They were testing something they called evolutionary thinking. They believed that most civilizations, including their own, eventually become trapped by their own success. Trapped how? They develop perfect systems for solving problems. These systems work so well that the civilizations stop trying new approaches. They become predictable, even to themselves. The architects feared this was happening to them. Jake nodded. So they built this place to find someone who still thought in unpredictable ways. More than that, Lisa continued, they wanted to learn from that someone. Look at this. Lisa pointed to new text that was appearing on the walls as the systems activated. The architects left a message. They said they would return when the structure found what they were looking for. They wanted to meet the species that could teach them to think differently again. Before Jake could respond, alarms started sounding throughout the complex, but these weren't emergency alarms. They sounded more like celebration bells. Communications. Officer Kelly Martinez called out from her argument with the central computer. Captain, something big is happening. The computer is saying that primary objectives are being achieved for the first time in its operational history. What primary objectives? Jake asked. I'm not sure, but it keeps saying something about paradigm. Breakthrough detected, and evolutionary thinking confirmed. Navigator. Tom Brooks looked up from the massive interconnected puzzle he was creating from dozens of smaller challenges. Captain, I think we might have accidentally solved the whole thing. What do you mean? Well, I've been connecting all these puzzles together, treating them like one big puzzle instead of separate challenges. And as I connect them, they're not just solving. They're transforming into something completely different. Tom was right. The puzzle chamber was transforming around them. Individual puzzles were dissolving and reforming into a single, massive mechanism that none of the aliens had ever seen before. Dr. Amy Foster was watching the alien reactions to all this change. Captain, the aliens are scared. They've been trapped here for so long that they're afraid to believe they might actually be freed. General Fax of the Krell approached Jake. The warrior looked uncertain, which was unusual for his species. Human. Captain, our tactical analysis suggests that your species has achieved something remarkable, but we do not understand how. You solve puzzles by breaking them. You improve systems by ignoring their design. You argue with computers instead of programming them. None of this should work. Jake smiled. Maybe that's the point, General. Maybe the fact that it shouldn't work is exactly why it does work. Engineer Kate Phillips and mechanic Paul Turner were still making improvements to the structure's core systems. But now their modifications were triggering responses throughout the entire complex. Captain, Kate called out, I think we might have found the master control system. But it's not like any computer I've ever seen. It's more like ... well, like it's alive. Alive how? It's learning from everything we do. But not just learning our methods. It's learning our attitudes, our willingness to try new things, our acceptance of failure as part of the learning process. Paul nodded in agreement. It's like the system was waiting for someone who would teach it to think differently. And every time we break a rule or try something unexpected, it gets more excited. Medical Officer Susan Wright was working on a biological puzzle that had evolved far beyond its original form. Captain, this ecosystem simulation isn't just stable now. It's creative. It's generating new life forms that weren't in the original program. How is that possible? I think the puzzle learned from my grandmother's garden approach. Instead of maintaining perfect balance, it's embracing change and adaptation. It's becoming more alive by becoming less perfect. Tech specialist Mark Collins had finished rebuilding several mechanical puzzles into hybrid devices that worked better than their original designs. "Captain, I think I understand what's happening. The structure doesn't just want to be solved. It wants to be improved. It wants to evolve. And that's what we're doing?" "That's what humans always do," Mark said. "We take things that work fine and try to make them work better, even when we're not supposed to." Pilot Emma Lewis had stopped crashing the flight simulator and was now using it to explore parts of the structure that had never been accessible before. "Captain, there are whole sections of this place opening up. Sections that have been sealed for thousands of years. What's in those sections? More architect technology, but not puzzles. This looks like, well, like laboratories and workshops. Like they were working on something big before they left." Corporal Danny Rodriguez, who had started the whole chain of events by solving the gravitational puzzle like a toy, was now working with a group of alien children who had been born in the structure. "Captain, the kids get it. They understand what we're doing better than the adults do." "How so?" "The adult aliens have forgotten how to play. They approach everything like it's a serious test. But the kids still remember that learning is supposed to be fun. They're helping me solve puzzles by treating them like games." As Danny spoke, more puzzles throughout the chamber were dissolving into light. The children from different alien species were working together, guided by human playfulness, to solve challenges that had stumped their elders for centuries. Dr. Amy Foster made an important observation. "Captain, I don't think we're just solving these puzzles. I think we're teaching the structure how to think like humans. And in return, it's teaching us about architect technology. Is that good or bad?" "I think it's exactly what the architects wanted to happen." Communications Officer Kelly Martinez suddenly stopped her argument with the central computer. "Captain, the computer just told me something important. It said the architects are coming back." "Coming back? From where?" "I don't know. But the computer said that the structure was designed to send a signal across the galaxy when it found what the architects were looking for. And Captain, it just sent that signal." Jake felt a mix of excitement and worry. They had apparently succeeded, beyond anyone's expectations. But success in an alien test didn't always mean safety for humans. "How long until the architects arrive?" Jake asked. Kelly consulted with the computer. "The computer estimates 3 standard hours, Captain." 3 hours, Jake repeated. "Well, people, it looks like we're about to meet the beings who built this place. I hope they're as interested in learning from us as we are in learning from them." As if responding to Jake's words, the entire structure pulsed with new energy. Ancient systems that had been dormant for millennia were fully active now. The air itself seemed charged with possibility. And somewhere in space, something that had been traveling for thousands of years was changing course, heading toward the crystal structure that had finally found what it was built to find. The architects arrived exactly 3 hours later, just as the computer had predicted. But they didn't arrive in ships like everyone expected. Instead, they simply appeared in the central chamber, materializing from beams of light that came from deep space. Captain Jake Morrison had seen many strange things in his career, but the architects were unlike anything he had imagined. They looked like tall, graceful beings made of living crystal, similar to their structure, but mobile and constantly changing. Their bodies shifted and flowed like water, but they maintained a roughly humanoid shape. "We are the architects," they said, speaking directly into everyone's minds rather than using voices. "We have returned because our ancient test has finally found what we sought for so long." Prime Calculator of the Zephyrians stepped forward, speaking for all the trapped civilizations. "Great architects, we have been here for thousands of years attempting your challenge. These humans arrived recently and solved puzzles we could not solve. They have succeeded where we failed." The lead architect turned toward the humans, and Jake felt a sense of curiosity and excitement coming from the being. You misunderstand the nature of our test, mathematical one. The humans did not succeed where you failed. The humans succeeded because they did something none of you attempted. What did we do? Jake asked. You questioned the test itself, the architect replied. You treated our challenge not as a sacred examination to be passed, but as a flawed system to be improved. You argued with our computer, modified our technology, and broke our rules. In doing so, you showed us exactly what we hoped to find. Dr. Lisa Carter spoke up. You wanted someone to break your rules? We wanted someone who still retained evolutionary thinking, the architect explained. Every civilization eventually developed systems that work so well that they stop trying new approaches. We call this success stagnation. It happened to us. It happened to every species trapped here. The architect gestured toward the alien civilizations gathered around them. These beings are incredibly intelligent and capable, but they approached our test with their established methods. The Zephyrians used pure logic. The Corellians used perfect coordination. The Krell used military tactics. All of these approaches are excellent, but they are predictable. And humans? Asked Dr. Amy Foster. Humans are chaotic, the architect said, and somehow Jake could sense that this was meant as the highest compliment possible. You have not yet developed rigid systems for solving problems. You still improvise, experiment, and fail regularly. You treat serious challenges as games, and games as serious challenges. This unpredictability is exactly what we needed to learn. Engineer Kate Phillips looked confused. But why? Why would advanced beings like you want to learn chaos from primitive? Beings like us? The architect's crystalline form shifted into what might have been a smile. Because chaos leads to growth. Engineer. Perfect systems are dead systems. They cannot adapt or evolve. We architects became so advanced that we lost the ability to surprise ourselves. Our thinking became as predictable as mathematical equations. Communications officer Kelly Martinez, who had argued with the computer for hours, stepped forward. So this whole structure was really a school? You wanted to learn from whoever was brave enough to tell you that your test was stupid? Precisely, the architect replied. We built this challenge to find a species that would teach us to think unpredictably again. But we could not simply ask for teachers. Any species advanced enough to find us would likely suffer from the same success stagnation that trapped us. So you made it look like a test, Navigator Tom Brooks said, understanding. But really, you were the ones being tested. Indeed, and you have taught us much already. Your willingness to connect separate puzzles into unified solutions. Your habit of improving systems instead of just using them. Your acceptance of failure as a learning tool rather than a defeat. These are abilities we lost long ago. Tech specialist Mark Collins looked around at all the alien civilizations watching this conversation. What about everyone else? The species that have been trapped here for thousands of years? The architect's form brightened. They are free to leave now, of course. The challenge is complete. But more importantly, they have learned new approaches to problem solving by watching humans work. If they choose, they can learn to think more chaotically, more creatively. Prime Calculator looked uncertain, but chaos creates errors. Logic prevents mistakes. Logic prevents some mistakes, the architect agreed, but it also prevents discoveries. Human Corporal Rodriguez solved our gravitational puzzle, not through calculation, but by remembering how toys behave. This connection between unrelated experiences is a form of thinking we had forgotten. Dr. Susan Wright spoke up. What happens now? Do you want us to stay and teach you? We would be honored to learn from you, the architect replied. But we also have much to teach. Our technology combined with human creativity could lead to discoveries that neither of our species could achieve alone. General Facts of the Krell looked thoughtful. Architect, could our species also learn these human methods? Any species can learn to think more chaotically, the architect said. But it requires abandoning the belief that there is always one correct solution to every problem. It requires accepting that sometimes the best answer comes from combining wrong answers in new ways. Pilot Emma Lewis, who had been listening quietly, asked an important question. Are there other structures like this one? Other tests you've set up across the galaxy? There were 12 such structures, the architect replied. This is the first to succeed. The others continue to wait for species that will teach us different forms of evolutionary thinking. Captain Jake Morrison looked around at his crew and felt proud of what they had accomplished. But he also felt a responsibility. What if we helped other species learn these methods? What if we shared what we've learned here? That would be a great gift to the galaxy, the architect said. But remember, the goal is not to make every species think like humans. The goal is to help each species rediscover their own capacity for unpredictable thinking. Mechanic Paul Turner, who had spent hours improving architect technology, raised his hand like a student in school. Can we keep working on your systems? I have a lot more ideas for improvements. The architect's laughter was like crystal bells ringing. Yes, human Paul. We would very much like to see what improvements you can make to technology we have considered perfect for millennia. As the conversation continued, Jake noticed that the structure around them was continuing to change. The walls were becoming more transparent, showing views of space outside. The rigid corridors were becoming more organic and flowing. Even the architect technology was evolving in response to human influence. The structure is still learning, Jake observed. Yes, the architect agreed. You have taught it to grow and change instead of simply maintaining itself. This is perhaps the most valuable lesson of all. Dr. Amy Foster made a final observation. So the real lesson here isn't that humans are better problem solvers than other species. It's that diversity of thinking is important, that even the most advanced civilizations need to keep learning new approaches. Exactly, the architect said. We built this challenge because we feared our own stagnation. You have shown us that growth never has to stop, no matter how advanced a species becomes. The freed alien civilizations began making preparations to leave the structure, but many chose to stay and continue learning human approaches to problem solving. The architects shared their advanced technology freely, eager to see what new discoveries would emerge from the combination of ancient wisdom and human creativity. As Jake looked around at aliens and humans working together, sharing ideas and approaches that none of them would have thought of alone, he realized that this was perhaps the most important discovery of all. Not that humans were special, but that every species had something unique to contribute, and that the galaxy was big enough for all kinds of thinking. The structure that had once been a trap became a research station where different species could learn from each other. The challenge that had imprisoned so many became a school that freed them all to think in new ways. And somewhere in space, 11 other crystal structures waited patiently for their own teachers to arrive, ready to learn whatever new forms of evolutionary thinking the galaxy had to offer. 3 months later, Captain Jake Morrison received a message from Earth asking him to explain how his crew had solved an ancient alien puzzle in under an hour when advanced civilizations had failed for thousands of years. Jake's reply was simple. We didn't try to solve it correctly. We just tried to solve it. Sometimes, he reflected, the most important lesson was the simplest one. And sometimes, being wrong in the right way was better than being right in the wrong way.